Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered if someone, somewhere, is watching over us? Or perhaps, if someone from our world has ever journeyed beyond the veil of the sky to see what lies on the other side? In the ancient tapestry of human stories, there is one such tale, a narrative so profound it has echoed through millennia, even though it lies outside the familiar pages of the Bible. It is the story of a man named Enoch, the seventh patriarch from Adam. He was a man who, in a time of growing darkness and corruption, walked a path of righteousness so pure that it caught the attention of the heavens themselves. This was not a king or a warrior, but a humble man chosen for an extraordinary destiny. Enoch's world was descending into chaos. Humanity, once innocent, was learning new and dangerous ways. But Enoch remained steadfast, a beacon of light in the encroaching gloom. Because of his unwavering devotion, he was selected for a mission unlike any other. He was to become a scribe for the heavens, a messenger between the divine realm and our own earthly plane. The angel Uriel appeared before him, not with a sword of flame, but with an invitation. He was to be taken on a grand tour of creation, a journey that would peel back the layers of reality and reveal the very mechanics of the universe and the divine judgments that would ultimately shape the future of mankind. Imagine being lifted from everything you know, carried through celestial spheres by a being of pure light. This was Enoch's reality. He was shown the secret chambers of the heavens, the storehouses of snow and hail, the treasuries of wind and dew. He saw how the sun and moon operate in perfect harmony, following paths laid out for them since the dawn of time. He learned of the intricate laws that govern the stars, each one a testament to a grand cosmic design. This knowledge was not given for his own sake. He was commanded to write it all down, to create a record for generations yet to come, a book of secrets that would serve as both a warning and a promise. This divine revelation came with a heavy price. The truths Enoch witnessed were immense, capable of overwhelming the mortal mind. He saw not only the splendor of creation, but also the terrifying consequences of defying its sacred order. He was shown the destinies of both the righteous and the wicked, the glorious rewards awaiting those who keep faith and the dreadful punishments reserved for those who stray. Enoch, the humble man who walked with God, was now burdened with the knowledge of all things, from the smallest movements of the cosmos to the final, sweeping judgment of all souls. His journey had just begun, and the most startling revelations were yet to come. While Enoch was being shown the perfect order of the heavens, a profound disorder was taking root on earth. A group of 200 celestial beings, known as the Watchers, looked down upon the daughters of men and were consumed by desire. Led by a powerful angel named Semjaza, they made a pact on the slopes of Mount Hermon, a sacred peak. They swore a binding oath to descend from their heavenly abode, break their sacred vows and take human wives for themselves. This act was not merely one of passion. It was a transgression of cosmic law, a blurring of the lines between the divine and the mortal that would unleash untold suffering upon the world. Their descent was a cataclysm disguised as a gift. The Watchers did not come empty-handed. To win the favor of their chosen partners and to cement their influence over humanity, they shared forbidden knowledge, secrets that mankind was not yet ready to possess. Azazel, one of the chief Watchers, taught men the art of metallurgy, not for crafting tools, but for forging swords, knives, and shields. He showed women how to make mirrors and jewelry, introducing vanity and deception. Semjaza taught the arts of enchantment and root cutting, while others revealed the secrets of astrology, the signs of the moon, and the art of warfare. Humanity, in its infancy, was handed the tools of its own destruction. From the unions between these fallen angels and mortal women, a new race was born. They were not human, nor were they divine. They were the Nephilim, giants of immense size and terrifying strength, said to stand 300 cubits tall. Their existence was an abomination, a physical manifestation of their parents' sin. At first, humanity tried to sustain them, providing for their insatiable appetites. But the giants consumed everything, all the grain, all the cattle, all the resources that humanity had painstakingly gathered. Their hunger was a bottomless pit, a drain on the very lifeblood of the earth. When the earth could no longer satisfy their ravenous hunger, the Nephilim turned their appetites upon their creators. They began to devour humans, and when that was not enough, they turned on the animals, the birds, and even on each other, drinking blood and consuming flesh in a horrifying frenzy of violence. The world that God had created as a paradise was transformed into a charnel house. The cries of the innocent, the blood of the slain, and the sheer lawlessness of these giant offspring created a wave of despair that washed over the planet, a deep and sorrowful groan that rose from the very soil. The chaos on earth did not go unnoticed in the heavens. The archangels, Michael, the great protector, Uriel, the light of God, Raphael, the healer, and Gabriel, the messenger, looked down from their celestial posts and saw a world drowning in its own blood. They saw the violence of the Nephilim, the corruption taught by the fallen watchers, and the desperate, silent screams of humanity. The earth itself, personified as a grieving mother, cried out to the gates of heaven, its voice laden with the sorrow of the souls that had been unjustly destroyed. The sheer volume of sin and suffering had become a stench that reached the highest throne. Moved by this profound injustice, the four archangels approached the throne of the Most High. They presented the case of humanity, acting as divine prosecutors against their fallen brethren. They spoke of the lawlessness that covered the face of the earth, a direct result of the secrets revealed by Azazel, who had taught all unrighteousness. They accused Semjaza and his co-conspirators of abandoning their heavenly station and defiling themselves with human women, creating a monstrous progeny that was devouring the world. They asked God how long this desecration would be allowed to continue, pleading for intervention before all was lost. The Most High heard their plea and the cry of the earth. Divine judgment was swift and absolute. A series of decrees were issued, each one tailored to address the source of the corruption. The angel Uriel was sent to the son of Lamech, a man named Noah, with a solemn warning. He was to tell Noah of a coming cataclysm, a great flood that would wash the world clean of all the wickedness that had stained it. Noah was instructed to build an ark, a vessel that would preserve a remnant of life, ensuring that humanity and the animal kingdom would not be completely annihilated by the impending judgment. Simultaneously, judgment was pronounced upon the leaders of the rebellion. Raphael was commanded to find the fallen angel Azazel, to bind him hand and foot, and to cast him into an abyss of total darkness in a desolate desert named Dudael. There he would remain, covered in sharp and jagged rocks until the great day of judgment, when he would be cast into the fire. Gabriel was given a different task, to incite the giants, the Nephilim, against one another. He was to spark a war among them, letting them destroy each other in battle so that their physical forms would be purged from the earth. The age of the giants was to end in a bloody civil war. The final and most significant judgment was reserved for Semjaza and the 200 watchers who had followed him. Michael, the chief of the archangels, was tasked with their punishment. He was commanded to bind Semjaza and all his associates, not in darkness, but in the valleys of the earth itself. There they would be imprisoned for 70 generations, forced to witness the destruction of their beloved children, the Nephilim. Their sentence was to be a long and agonizing wait, trapped between heaven and hell until the final judgment, when they would be led away to an abyss of fire for eternal torment. Their rebellion was met with a punishment that would span the ages. Amid these divine decrees, Enoch was given a new and somber role. He, a mortal man, was sent as a messenger to the immortal watchers. He was to travel to their place of mourning and deliver the final, unalterable verdict from heaven. He found the fallen angels gathered together, weeping and grieving for their fate and the fate of their children. They were filled with terror and regret, and upon seeing Enoch they made a desperate plea. They asked him, the righteous man who could still speak with God, to write down a petition on their behalf, a formal request for forgiveness and peace. They hoped that his intercession might soften the heart of the Most High. Enoch, bound by duty, did as they asked. He wrote down their prayer for mercy, and then, in a vision, presented it before the throne of God. But the answer he received was definitive and heartbreaking. The Most High declared that the Watchers' sin was unique and unforgivable. They had abandoned their eternal spiritual existence in the high heavens to lust after mortal flesh, a temporary and corruptible form. They had defiled themselves, creating a monstrous lineage and teaching humanity secrets that led only to sin and death. For this, there could be no peace, no pardon. Their request was utterly rejected. Enoch returned to the defeated Watchers and delivered the grim news. They would never again ascend to heaven. Their legacy on earth would be one of pain, and even in death their influence would linger. God explained to Enoch a chilling detail about the Nephilim. While their giant bodies would be destroyed in battle, their spirits would not perish. These disembodied spirits would remain on earth, invisible and malevolent. they would become the evil spirits and demons of future ages, continuing to plague humanity, causing oppression, destruction, and sorrow until the very last day of the Great Judgment. The Watcher's sin would cast a long dark shadow over all of human history. After delivering the judgment upon the Watchers, Enoch's journey took another turn, moving from the past sins of angels to the future destiny of humanity. He was shown a series of 3 profound visions, known as the Book of Parables. These parables were not simple stories, but, cosmic revelations about the ultimate battle between good and evil and the central figure who would preside over the final judgment. The first parable painted a vivid picture of 2 divergent paths. The righteous, he saw, were destined to dwell in a place of eternal light and joy, their homes illuminated by the presence of the Lord of Spirits. For the sinners and the unrepentant, however, a different fate awaited, a realm of darkness and torment, where they would cry out for a mercy that would never come. The second parable introduced a figure of immense significance, a being referred to as the Son of Man or the Elect One. Enoch learned that this being was not created with the world, but existed before the sun and the stars were made, dwelling in righteousness with the Lord of Spirits. This Son of Man was destined to be a light to the nations and the hope of those who are troubled of heart. On the day of judgment, he would be revealed as the universal judge. Kings, rulers, and the mighty of the earth, who had lived in arrogance and oppressed the poor, would tremble and fall down before him, their power turning to ash in the face of his divine authority. Their pleas would be in vain, for they would be banished from his sight. This Son of Man was not just a judge but also a restorer. Enoch saw that he would sit upon a throne of glory, and all judgment would be given to him. With wisdom flowing from his mouth, he would dismantle the old, corrupt world and establish a new one. The righteous and the elect would be saved on that day, their faces shining with joy as they were welcomed into a renewed kingdom. The earth itself would be transformed and they would live upon it in peace and communion with God forever. This vision offered a profound hope, a promise that the injustices of the world would one day be righted by a divine and compassionate ruler. The third and final parable expanded on this theme of ultimate justice. It detailed the final judgment of all who had caused suffering. The wicked kings who had trusted in their riches and the fallen watchers who had led humanity astray were brought before the Son of Man. He judged them with perfect righteousness and cast them into the eternal abyss of fire, the same fiery chasm prepared for Azazel and Semjaza. With their removal, the earth was cleansed. The righteous inherited this purified world, living in perfect safety and harmony, their days filled with endless peace under the gentle reign of the Son of Man, in a kingdom that would have no end. Following the parables, the angel Uriel returned to Enoch to give him a different kind of revelation, one not of judgment, but of order. This section of his writings is known as the Astronomical Book. Uriel guided Enoch through the heavens, revealing the divinely ordained mechanics of the cosmos. He was shown the precise and unchangeable laws that governed the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. He saw how the sun travels through 6 celestial gates, dictating the length of day and night throughout the year and establishing a perfect solar calendar of 364 days. This cosmic clockwork was a testament to the Creator's infinite wisdom and power. Enoch learned that every luminary in the sky follows its prescribed path without fail. The moon, with its own intricate cycles, regulates the months and the tides, waxing and waning in perfect obedience to divine command. The stars, each with a name and a station, follow their courses faithfully, never deviating from the order set for them. This perfect celestial harmony stood in stark contrast to the chaos and disobedience that Enoch had witnessed on earth. The heavens declared the glory of God through their unwavering order, while humanity, given free will, had chosen to corrupt its ways and bring disorder to the world. Uriel also gave Enoch a solemn warning. He foretold that in the last days of humanity, people would err concerning this celestial knowledge. They would corrupt the calendar, miscalculate the seasons, and fall into confusion. Sinners would alter the paths of the stars and misinterpret their signs, leading them further away from the truth of God's creation. This forsaking of divine order would be a sign of the end times, a reflection of the spiritual decay that would precede the final judgment. The very heavens, which testified to God's perfection, would become another source of human error and rebellion. After these astronomical lessons, Enoch was shown a more immediate and terrifying vision. He saw the sky itself seemingly collapse, and the earth groan as it was swallowed by a great abyss. He was witnessing a preview of the great flood, the judgment that Uriel had told him to announce to Noah. In the vision, he saw the world consumed by water as a direct result of mankind's overwhelming wickedness. But even in this vision of total destruction, there was a glimmer of hope. God assured Enoch that a righteous remnant would be preserved. He saw Noah and his family being saved in a wooden ark, floating to safety as the world was washed clean. Enoch's visions grew even more symbolic and sweeping in a section often called the animal apocalypse. In a powerful dream, he witnessed the entire history of humanity, from the creation of Adam to the final judgment, all depicted through the allegory of animals. The story began with a single white bull representing Adam. From this bull came a heifer and 2 calves, one black and one red, symbolizing Cain and Abel. The righteous lineage of humanity through figures like Seth and Noah was consistently represented by white bulls and sheep. This allegory provided a unique and compelling lens through which to view the spiritual journey of mankind. The vision then depicted the corruption that led to the flood. The white bulls began to mix with wild animals and predatory beasts, lions, tigers, and wolves, representing the intermingling of the righteous with the wicked, and most profoundly, the sin of the watchers taking human wives. The offspring of these unions were depicted as elephants, camels, and wild asses, a clear reference to the monstrous Nephilim who brought violence and chaos to the world. The dream showed these creatures devouring the righteous sheep, painting a visceral picture of the oppression and destruction that plagued the early world, culminating in the judgment of the flood. After the flood, the story of Israel was told through the same animal symbolism. The descendants of Noah were shown as white sheep. The period of bondage in Egypt was depicted by wolves oppressing the flock. Moses, the great ram, led the sheep out of this oppression. The building of the temple in Jerusalem was shown as the construction of a grand house for the sheep. However, the sheep often strayed, and they were attacked by lions, Assyrians, and Babylonians and other predators, symbolizing the cycles of sin, judgment, and exile that defined the history of the nation. Prophets were sent as faithful dogs to protect the flock, but they were often ignored. The vision culminated in a grand finale depicting the end times. In the last days, small lambs were born who began to grow horns, representing the rise of a righteous and powerful remnant. A great white ram, a clear messianic figure, appeared to lead them. The climax of the dream was a final battle where all the birds of prey and wild beasts, representing the world's evil empires and sinister forces, gathered to attack the flock. But they were ultimately defeated and cast into a fiery abyss. A new, glorious house, larger and loftier than the first, was built, and all the surviving white sheep were gathered into it, living in a renewed world under the gentle rule of the Lord of the flock. In his final teachings to his son Methuselah and his descendants, Enoch laid out one last grand prophecy, a timeline of all human history known as the Apocalypse of Weeks. He divided the entire span of the world's existence into 10 symbolic weeks, with each week representing a distinct era or major event in the divine plan. This chronological prophecy served as a final, comprehensive roadmap, putting all of his previous visions into a clear and linear perspective. It was a message of both warning and profound hope, showing that even in the darkest times, history was moving toward a divinely ordained conclusion. The first week, Enoch explained, was the era of his own birth and life, a time of foundational righteousness. The second week would be marked by the Great Flood, a period of immense wickedness followed by a cleansing judgment from which the man of righteousness, Noah, would be saved. The third week would see the rise of a chosen man, Abraham, who would become the father of a great nation, and the plant of righteousness for eternity. The fourth week would be defined by the giving of the law to Moses on Mount Sinai, a vision of holiness and a covenant for all generations. These early weeks established the foundation of God's relationship with humanity. The prophecy continued, describing the fifth week as the time of the building of the glorious house, the first temple in Jerusalem, a kingdom of splendor that would last forever. However, the sixth week would be a time of darkness and falling away. The people would forsake the law, the temple would be burned, and the nation would be scattered. But even in this darkness, a man would ascend, a reference to the prophet Elijah. The seventh week was described as an apostate generation, full of wickedness, but at its conclusion, the elect righteous from the eternal plant of righteousness, would be chosen and given knowledge sevenfold, likely pointing to the coming of the Messiah and his followers. The final weeks described the end of days. The 8th week would be the week of righteousness, where a sword is given to the righteous to execute judgment on their oppressors, and a new house is built for the great king. The 9th week would be one of revelation, where the world is destined for destruction, and the final judgment begins. Finally, the 10th week would see the culmination of all things. The former heaven would pass away, and a new eternal heaven would appear. There would be no more sin, only endless righteousness, as the saints dwell with the Lord of spirits for all eternity. As Enoch's life on earth drew to a close, one final miraculous event was recorded. His great-grandson Noah was born, and the child's appearance was anything but ordinary. His flesh was as white as snow and as red as a blooming rose, his hair was white like pure wool, and when he opened his eyes they illuminated the entire house like the sun. His father Lamech was terrified, believing the child was the offspring of a watcher. But Enoch, full of wisdom from his heavenly journeys, revealed the truth to his son Methuselah. Noah was not a monster, he was a righteous soul chosen by God to be the instrument of humanity's salvation from the coming flood. After delivering his final prophecies, blessings and warnings, Enoch's time among mortals was over. He had walked with God, and his purpose on earth was fulfilled. He gathered his family, gave them their final instructions, and told them not to seek him. He was then taken. The texts describe him being carried away by angels, ascending into the heavens not through death, but through a direct translation into the divine presence. He was given a place among the righteous, transformed from a mortal scribe into an immortal being of light, forever to dwell in the celestial kingdom he had been privileged to witness. The book that bears his name, however, remained. Though it was not included in the final canon of the Hebrew Bible or most Christian Old Testaments, its influence was immense. Early Christian writers and thinkers such as Tertullian and Origen were familiar with it and quoted from it. The New Testament book of Jude directly quotes a prophecy from the book of Enoch regarding the Lord's coming judgment. Its detailed descriptions of angels, demons, the fall of the Watchers, the nature of the Messiah, and the final judgment profoundly shaped religious thought for centuries, filling in gaps left by canonical scripture. Today, the Book of Enoch stands as one of the most significant and fascinating apocryphal texts ever discovered. It offers a window into the rich, complex worldview of Second Temple Judaism, a world wrestling with questions of evil, justice, and the end of days. It is a story that pushes the boundaries of imagination, asking us to consider the vastness of the cosmos, the thin veil between our world and the next, and the profound idea that a single righteous human could be chosen to journey into the heart of creation and return with a message for us all. It reminds us that even in the oldest stories there are still new and startling truths to be found.